Hello. In my continuing reviews of what I refer to as weird fantasy novels, which from about 1885 all the way through 1929, the next one in sequence, though it's not in publishing sequence, this is earlier, is H.Rider Haggard's She, which was first published in 1887, a revised version published in 1891. It's a standard, in some ways, it's a standard adventure tale and a romance that is not really particularly weird in retrospect, in comparison to some of the other things I'm going to be reviewing here, like A Voyage to Arcturus, which I did yesterday, and The Moon Pool by Air Merritt. But it still does have weird fantasy elements, particularly in the depiction of an underground civilization that was lost, and also the portrayal of a beautiful white queen ruling an African tribe, which has some interesting racial and colonial implications. But again, it was a well-written book. I really enjoyed reading it. The story is fairly simple. A man named, an Englishman named Leo Vinci receives a gift on his 25th birthday from his mentor and foster parent, Horace Hawley, who's a college professor and an Egyptologist. And what the gift is a potsherd, and it's called the Shirt of Amenartus. And Amenartus was apparently a handmaiden of a very powerful priestess of Isis back in Egypt, and ancient Egypt. And they read the potsherd, the hieroglyphics, and it contains a description and also a map to a place they've never heard of called the lost city of Kor. I'm not sure exactly how it's pronounced. And they decide they're going to go to this place. They take a ship, and the ship is shipwrecked, and they and their captain, whose name is Mahmud, are captured by a race of African warriors known as the Amahagger. And they're actually, at one point, they're cannibals. They're going to eat Job, the butler of Horace Hawley, and they're heating up what they call a hot pot, which is literally an iron pot that they're going to heat to red hot and put it on his head and kill him, and then eat him. And then Leo Vinci finds out about this, and he shoots the natives who are going to do this, and he accidentally kills Mahmud while he's doing that. That was revised. That didn't happen. In the original, they actually did, I think, eat Job, but and then they were killed. But he decided that was too disgusting and decided to cut it out in the 1891 version. Then they are taken, the Amahagger are actually arrested by these soldiers of Kor, and they're going to take her to someone who they refer to as Hia, and or she who must be obeyed. And they don't know who this is, and they're taken into this underground secret city, which is very Egyptian and has temples and things, and they're very impressed with the city itself. And then they're brought before Hia, who is this beautiful blonde queen who rules over these people. And she says, who is it amongst you who violated my laws? And they raise their hands, and has them put to death, basically, because you can't violate she who must be obeyed. That's why she's called she who must be obeyed, to instill fear in these people who would otherwise not fear a woman, albeit a white woman, in their African society. And then now Leo has begun to see what kind of person she is, and he's starting to sort of resent her. He has started to fall for another woman, a woman named Ustane, who is sort of Asha's handmaiden. I should notice that that's the correct pronunciation. I know it's spelled Ayesha, and in British pronunciation they would say Ayesha, but Haggard himself says it's an Arabic name and it should be pronounced Asha. And so that's how I'm going to refer to her throughout this video. They meet her. She starts to become jealous of Ustane. Likes Leo. He's not really certain whether he likes her or not. He thinks she's pretty, and he's kissed her a couple of times. But Asha starts to become jealous and actually has Ustane put to death. By this time, Leo has fallen completely under her spell. He is completely entranced. She can do no wrong in his eyes, and he doesn't even complain after she has Ustane murdered. And Later, she becomes convinced when she sees Leo's face that he is the reincarnation of her old love, Callicrates, a Greek uh, priest of Isis who she actually murdered in a fit of jealousy because he was having an affair with her handmaiden Amonartis, and she catches them together and stabs him to death, and regrets it ever since. And after that happens, she discovers something called the flame of life, and by walking into this flame, which can become cold, uh, she was given eternal youth and immortality. And now she had become determined after that to wait for Callicrates to be reincarnated. And she believes that Leo Vinci is Callicrates reincarnated because he looks exactly like him. She theorizes that the reason for this is that Amonartis, who she expelled from Kor after she betrayed her, was actually pregnant at the time she was expelled, and she had a son, and that son became the line of people who became the Vincis, and that's why Leo Vinci looks like Callicrates. She offers to take Callicrates into the flame, or Leo into the flame of life, and he's hesitant. He doesn't want to do it. He's afraid. She says, "There's nothing to be afraid of. I'll show you." And she steps into the flame of life. And unfortunately, because she had previously entered it, now all of its magic is reversed, and she ages very rapidly to 2,000 years old and dies, turns just into a pile of dust. But before she dies, she tells him, "Don't fear, I will return." That doesn't happen until the second novel, Ayesha, The Return of She, which in some ways was written in 1905. In some ways is better than this one. Some of the interesting concepts in this, Ayesha had said that she wanted to go to England, back to England with Holly and Leo, and basically take over, to depose Queen Victoria and become the Queen of England, and maybe even the Queen of the world. And that's kind of an interesting idea for its own time. Um, there are obviously quite a lot of subtext in this. One of them is colonialism, which Haggard was actually a supporter of. He had worked in South Africa, and he said something about, wouldn't it be nice if we could see the Union Jack hoisted over the Transvaal? He wanted English rule of Africa and was very much an imperialist. Um, and this book deals with some of those things. The idea of African people as being inferior and being savages and cannibals, which is not entirely true and not entirely free. Yeah, sure, there were some cannibal tribes, but they weren't. It was not something that was prevalent in African society. And of course, we know that they had a lot of very sophisticated societies like the Yoruba and the Dogon, who had advanced astronomy and agricultural techniques, and were really quite advanced people and didn't really need to be overseen, as it were, by white people, which is what the British were doing. So there's that element in there. There's also the idea of the quote-unquote new woman. The new woman was the beginnings of the feminist movement, the beginnings of the suffragist movement in England, which were cropping up at that time. You had people emerging like Ada Lovelace, who had a PhD and was actually the world's first computer programmer. You had brilliant women like Marie Curie, who discovered radium, and others who were becoming college educated and teaching and doing the same things that men had traditionally been had been only for men at that time. And of course, they were pressing for the vote, and the suffragette movement started around then too. Some people accused Haggard of sort of parodying that and making fun of it, and he said that's not true. He didn't really have any of those ideas in the book. He said, "I just wanted to write a nice romance." He didn't intend for she to be representative of the quote unquote new woman, and it was coincidental that people took it that way. He certainly did not mean it to be an anti-feminist book in any way, as he was in fact a supporter of some of these ideas. Though it seems like he's not, just because of the way he wrote. But again, that's just has more to do with the Victorian period and the way people wrote novels. He did write, as I said, he actually wrote 3 follow-up novels. I won't call them sequels because only one, the first one, Ayesha, The Return of She, is a direct sequel. In that, Leo and Holly are older now. They have discovered that there's a rumor of a white sorceress in a strange area of Africa. And they go to find out more about the sorceress, find out that she is named Hesea and she's an old woman. And through a series of tests, Leo discovers that she is, in fact, the reincarnation of Ayesha. And he declares his love for her, that despite the fact that she's an old woman, he still loves her. And because he says that, a volcano erupts and emits a kind of an energy that returns her to youth and beauty. And they go back to Kor and they're going to rule over it together. I thought that was a nice story. It was very well done. And I like that book actually better than the first one. The third is a prequel because it takes place about 20 years prior to the events of the first novel, She. It's called She and Allan, and is an adventure between Allan Quatermain and his handy witch doctor, Umslopogaas, and Ayesha, and they go to Kor they're summoned by Ayesha to help her fight an invading army. And Umslopogaas, before they go, enchants Allan, so he's not going to fall under Ayesha's spell, despite the fact that she's very beautiful and seductive. And so they go and they help her, and then they come back, and there's a kind of fun adventure. I have not actually read the fourth book. It's called Wisdom's Daughter. It's told from Ayesha's point of view, and is written in 1923. The last of the She and Allan was written in 1921. So this is the last of the books that Haggard himself did. There are a couple of books that were done by other people, but it tells the story of how it's told from Ayesha's perspective. It tells how she went from being just a handmaiden of Isis to the ruler of Kor, and what the events that led up to it, which is interesting enough in itself. Like I said, I haven't read it, but I probably will because it's in the public domain now. So you have some interesting aspects. You have some weird aspects. It's really quite a good novel. It has been adapted into film many, many, many times, including a silent film by George Méliès, of all people. And the most famous are probably the 1935 version, which stars Helen Gahagin, who went on to become Senator Helen Gahagin Douglas, a very famous U.S. senator. And Randolph Scott and Nigel Bruce, who most people will know as Watson from the Basil Rathbone series of Sherlock Holmes movies. And he plays kind of Holly as sort of a similar, very bungling kind of character. He's very funny. He's a natural comedian. But again, he plays him sort of seriously, too. And it's a good adaptation, though. For some reason, they transferred it from Africa to the Arctic, and I don't know why they did that. It's sort of like they were trying to mix Lost Horizon and She. It's more faithful to Haggard's novel than later adaptations. Some of the things they have, like the hot pot scene takes place, and the scene with the cannibals, and the depiction of the flame of life is very similar to the book. And what happens in the end is basically identical to what happens in the book. I just recently watched, actually last night, just to refresh myself with it, the 1965 Hammer Films version, which starred the astonishingly lovely Ursula Andress, although her voice for some reason was dubbed. John Richardson as Leo Vinci, and Peter Cushing as Holly, and Christopher Lee as Bilali, a very pretty girl named Rosenda Monteros as Ustane, a sort of a handmaiden of She, who becomes enamored of Leo, unfortunately to her demise. Job is played by Bernard Cribbins, a great British comedian who is the butler to Holly. They moved the setting from Victorian England to just after World War I, which actually works quite well because it gives them a sort of an world-weary feeling, and they cut a lot of the sort of dull passages out. There's no cannibalism. There's an attempted sacrifice of Leo by this group, the Amahagar. They have a punishment scene which is quite frightening, where she exerts her power over the Amahagar, and that's quite a frightening scene. And there's also, they gave her a really stunning outfit in that one, where she has like a headdress and this sort of, I can't even describe, like a copper lame bodysuit, just astonishingly good looking on the very lovely Miss Andress, who said she loved all the costumes. She wasn't entirely thrilled with the movie. She didn't really want to do it. She was under contractual obligation to do one movie for Hammer, and she did this. They asked her to do the follow-up, The Vengeance Machine, but she said no, so they had to hire someone else for that. Alinka Berova, I think was her name, the one who did that movie, which doesn't really bear a whole heck of a lot of resemblance to Haggard's novel at all. And there have been other adaptations. There have been plays. There have been even like a rock opera was done, and I think I think last year, 2024. So obviously she has had a very huge impact on culture for all these years. It has never been out of print since 1887. Rider Haggard's most popular novel, even more popular than his Allan Quatermain novels like King Solomon's Mines. Very influential, very weird, and I highly, highly recommend it. She, A History of Adventure.